We're just a sounding board, Maya. A good one, I'll admit. But vision, the real vision, that was always mine. The words hung in the air, sharp and sterile as the white projector light that turned Zoe into a conquering silhouette on the Innovatex Summit stage. Below her, a sea of faces, investors, journalists, our friends nodded, captivated. My world went silent, the applause a distant hum. All I could feel was the cold rim of the water glass in my hand. I looked up at the woman I had trusted with my dreams, my code, my future, and my voice was unnaturally steady when I finally spoke to the person next to me. I see. We met at a hackathon 5 years ago, two sides of the same coin. I was the coder, happiest in the quiet glow of a monitor, turning abstract logic into functional beauty. Zoe was the orator, the evangelist, a whirlwind of charisma who could sell sand in a desert. We won that hackathon with a prototype for a hyper-personalized scheduling app. We called it Compass. I remember brainstorming its core feature, an algorithm that learned a user's rhythms and anticipated their needs, over cheap ramen at 3 a.m. in my tiny apartment. My fingers flew across the keyboard, and she watched, eyes wide with what I thought was admiration. That's it, Maya, she'd whispered. You're building the soul of this thing. The first red flag came a month later. An early mentor praised the elegance of the code. Before I could speak, Zoe jumped in, laughing. Thanks, I was up all night wrestling with that predictive logic. She just smiled at me, a quick, conspiratorial wink that felt, for a moment, more like a warning than a shared joke. I told myself she was just better at this part of the game. I was the architect, she was the ambassador. We needed both. The next 2 years were a blur of caffeine and ambition. We worked out of a shared space downtown, fueled by overpriced La Colombe coffee and the fierce belief we were building something revolutionary. Landed a $50,000 seed round in March, celebrating at a restaurant called the Gilded Sparrow, drinking champagne that cost more than my first laptop. It felt like we were on top of the world. But slowly, the balance shifted. I was pulling 18-hour days, refining the backend, securing the database, squashing bugs. Zoe was handling investor relations, a nebulous series of long lunches and industry parties. She was building the brand, she'd say, while I was building the product. When server costs spiked, I covered the $7,500 difference from my own savings. A temporary loan, she promised, until the next round of funding came through. I rationalized it all. She was the face, I was the foundation. One couldn't exist without the other. The unraveling began with an accident. Zoe left her laptop unlocked on her desk when she ran out for a call. An email notification popped up on her screen. The subject, Project Nightingale's solo founder deck. Our project was Compass. A cold dread, slick and immediate, washed over me. I didn't click it. I didn't need to. That night I started digging. For 3 months my life became a quiet, parallel operation. I documented everything. I installed screen recording software that captured every line of code I wrote. I meticulously archived our text conversations, our shared documents. I used a network analysis tool to discover she had created a parallel GitHub repository under the name Nightingale, slowly migrating my code, subtly reframing commit notes to imply her authorship. Each discovery was a fresh betrayal, widening the chasm between the friend I thought I had and the stranger who was methodically erasing me. The breaking point was that conference. Zoe had insisted it was the perfect place to debut our work. She stood on that stage, under the Innovatex banner, in front of our peers, our mentors, and a key investor named Wallace who we'd been courting for months. She presented Compass, but she called it Nightingale. She described my algorithm, the one I'd named the Predictive Heart, as a moment of divine inspiration that came to her one morning. After the presentation, flushed with victory, she found me by the catering table. Some people are architects and some people are bricklayers, she said, her voice low and syrupy with false sympathy. You laid some amazing bricks, Maya, and I'll always be grateful. But I built the cathedral. Don't try to take that from me. In that moment, the hurt froze into something cold and hard and clear. Rage was too messy. This required precision. I noticed the tiny custom logo on her slide deck, a stylized nightingale. She had it commissioned. It was a detail so small, so arrogant, it would be her undoing. My first call was to Veronica, a tech IP lawyer my uncle swore by. Her retainer was $15,000, nearly everything I had left. Her office was a stark, minimalist space overlooking the city, and she listened to my story without a flicker of emotion. When I finished, she nodded slowly. Good, she said. You didn't get angry. You got organized. We spent the next 8 weeks building a fortress of evidence. We had my private GitHub repository with 412 timestamped code commits. We had server logs showing my IP address as the sole source for 95% of the application's core architecture. Had the 83 text messages where Zoe referred to me as the coding genius behind the operation. We had my Figma design files, dated 6 months before Project Nightingale even existed as a name. And we had the ironic coincidence, the killer proof. A video file from my cloud backup, taken during an early brainstorming session. It was me at a whiteboard, mapping out the logic for the predictive heart. Zoe was filming, and her voice was clear as a bell. Wow, that's genius, she says. I could never come up with that. One afternoon, a close call. A text from Zoe. Hey, our old server account is about to expire. Mind sending me the login so I can migrate the last few assets? Veronica saw it for what it was, an attempt to erase the primary evidence. On her advice, I replied, sorry, I can't remember the password. Just let it lapse. As a decoy, Veronica sent Zoe's new corporation a low-stakes cease and desist letter, claiming a minor trademark dispute over the name Compass. Zoe, arrogant and overconfident, walked right into the trap, focusing her legal team on a meaningless branding squabble. The execution was set for Nightingale's official launch party. It was at a rooftop venue called the Apex Lounge, a glittering affair filled with tech bloggers, influencers, and the investor Wallace, who had just wired Zoe $150,000. She was holding a glass of champagne, the queen of her own coronation, when I approached. You built a beautiful cathedral, Zoe. She smiled, a triumphant, pitying expression. Maya, so good of you to come. No hard feelings, right? As she spoke, a uniformed man stepped forward and handed her a thick legal envelope. Her smile faltered. Her eyes scanned the first page, a temporary injunction freezing all corporate assets. Her bravado curdled into confusion, then raw panic. At that moment, Veronica appeared at my side, calm and implacable. She turned to Wallace. Mr. Pierce, she said, her voice cutting through the ambient music, I suggest you consult your counsel. A recent investment is now attached to a company with disputed ownership and significant intellectual property infringement liability. A shocked murmur rippled through the crowd. Zoe was sputtering, her face ashen. I believe you called this the predictive heart, I said, looking her directly in the eye. I pulled out my phone and airdropped a file to the massive presentation screen behind the bar. The room went silent as the video played. There I was, 2 years younger, excitedly drawing on a whiteboard. And there was Zoe's voice, a ghost from a more honest time, admitting her own limitations, sealing her own fate. She stared at the screen, then at me, her entire empire crumbling in the space of 30 seconds. I leaned in. The bricks send their regards. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. TechCrunch ran the story the next morning. Nightingale founder accused of IP theft in dramatic launch party showdown. Wallace clawed back his funding, citing fraud. Zoe's carefully curated social media presence vanished. The case never made it to court. We signed over 100% of the intellectual property and the hollowed-out company shell in exchange for me not pursuing further damages. A year later, a friend sent me a screenshot. Zoe was a junior project manager at a regional insurance company, her LinkedIn profile scrubbed of any mention of Nightingale, a vision of cathedrals. 6 months after the settlement, I relaunched the app under its original name, Compass. It didn't explode, but it grew. Steady, honest, and mine. I now live in a quiet apartment overlooking a park, working with a small team that values collaboration over charisma. There's no triumph, only a deep, earned peace. Last week, I met with a potential new partner. He looked over my work and said, "You have an incredible vision, Maya." I smiled. Vision is important, but it's nothing without the person who can actually build it. The cathedral was finally mine, and I had laid every single stone.